So all of this material is what's called the Jebsen hand function test. Used to be called the Jebsen-Taylor hand function test. It's very old test. We used it when I was in OT school. Although in those days, you had to put it together yourself. You couldn't buy it in a kit like this. So the Jebsen has 7 subtests, which are made to simulate actual functional activities. So you have a score sheet where you can write down the person's score in the 7 activities in their non-dominant hand and their dominant hand. Now, this is really, I think, a pretty cheaply put together package, considering that these are the instructions. They've obviously been copied multiple times, and it's just not a very high class thing. But the way it's set up is it tells you the procedure, and then here are the actual words that you will read to the person. One of my concerns about this test is you'll see on the directions for each subtest, it is telling you to start with the non-dominant hand and then do the dominant hand. Now, as we know in therapy, if we're working with a person who's got impairment, we want to start with the unaffected hand to make sure the person understands how to do all the tasks, and then move to the affected hand. That way, you, as I said, can gauge understanding, and also the person can have some level of success before you start them right out with having difficulty. So I take issue with directions that tell you to start with non-dominant and then move to dominant. There is another piece to this. It's a very wide piece of wood with a little bar that comes up in the middle and some lines on it. And the test comes with a vise. So you're actually supposed to put this piece of wood on the table and hold it down with the vise. And that gives you the exact markings for how to move some of your stuff or how to set it up. But we're not going to work with that right now. So the first subtest is writing. And you're supposed to give the person a ballpoint pen and 4 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper that have no lines on them. Okay, here's some paper that's already been used. And then you're supposed to actually put that on the clipboard. And then you have a sentence for them to copy. So there are actually 4 different cards with sentences. Each sentence has 24 letters and is of 3rd grade reading difficulty. And they're all done in all caps, which I don't really understand why. So what happens is you would give the person the card with the typed face down on a book stand. You'd have everything arranged, and then they would have their clipboard with their paper. And when you say go, they will turn the card over, or you'll turn the card over, and they have to write it. So you have your stopwatch. So what you're doing is you're timing from the minute you say the word go until they lift their pen from the page at the end of the sentence. And you do this with their non-dominant hand first and then their dominant hand. So again, I don't really see the purpose of that, since most of us don't write well with our non-dominant hand to begin with. But that is what the first test is. So that is supposed to simulate writing. When you do this in class, you'll be able to read the exact directions. The next test is supposed to simulate page turning. So what you're supposed to do is give them 5 3x5 index cards that are ruled on one side only. And you lay the cards out 2 inches apart on the table. The cards are oriented vertically and they are 5 inches from the edge of the table. That's why you have that other big wooden thing that you can lay them out exactly. But what's going to happen is when you tell them to go, they're going to turn the cards over one at a time. And this is supposed to indicate their ability to turn pages. Okay, I guess maybe you turn them that way. And they're supposed to do it as quickly as they can. The third subtest is called lifting small common objects. So you have an empty coffee can in front of the client, 5 inches from the edge of the table, and you have 2 paper clips oriented vertically, 2 bottle caps with the inside facing up, and 2 pennies. And so these are in a row. I don't have them arranged correctly now, but anyway, you'll see that. So all of that are arranged with the paper clips farthest and the pennies nearest the can. And everything is 2 inches apart. And you say go, and they're supposed to pick the items up and drop them in the can. So actually, unfortunately, I did this backwards. This would have been for my left hand. When I was doing it with my right hand, the can would have been on my left. So that is lifting small common objects. The next one is called simulating feeding, where you would have these beans oriented on the board. And what you're supposed to do is take the teaspoon in your hand and pick up the beans one at a time and drop them in the can. Okay, so again, if I was using my right hand, the can would be on my left. This board would be here with this backing, so you could actually kind of hit that backing, I think. But anyway, so that's the simulated feeding. Again, as I've said, you're supposed to start with your non-dominant hand and work your way to your dominant hand, which most of us do not eat with our non-dominant hand. The next one is called stacking checkers. So you would have 4 of these checkers on the board that was clamped down, and there are 2 on each side of the board, 2 on each side of the center. I guess they're like this. And what they're supposed to do is stack the checkers as fast as they can, like that. Okay. So I'm going to put all of these back in the can for now. Sorry, that makes a lot of noise. The next one is lifting large light objects. So you actually have 5 empty cans where, again, the cans would be set up, and what they're supposed to do is pick up the can. They're 2 inches apart, and they're supposed to have an open end, and the open end is supposed to be face down. They do not have an open end. So, but what you're supposed to do is pick up the cans and move them to the other side of the board. So they're very light. The last item is picking up large, heavy objects. And this, you have 5 cans that look just like those, except these cans are filled. They are 1 pound. I will tell you, when we did this test when I was in college, we used paint cans, so they weighed a lot more than 1 pound, because I don't really think of 1 pound as being something heavy. But again, that's the test. So you can see you have all of these items that are supposed to simulate everyday activities.